right now, I'd like you to, as part of our review, add to the chat one way humans altered an ecosystem from your homework assignment. So from the Human Impact Biointeractive, what was one thing that you learned from doing that assignment? They polluted the atmosphere. Yep. By adding factories, right? There was a factory that got added to the image.
They fished too much.
If you can't find the homework assignment, it's linked to today's page. It's also under the module. It says Ecology Graded Practice number 2. The notes are in Ecology Virtual Day number 2 in the agenda. Okay, overcut trees. Yeah, they cut down forests. The farms polluted the oceans. Yep, there was runoff from those farms. They fished too much. Yep, they overfished. Lots of polluting the atmosphere. Yeah, the farms being close to the ocean affected the plankton. And when you affect animals lower on the food chain, that affects everything in that food chain, in that food web. Great. I got lots of polluting the atmosphere. You guys had a, what was that, Mr. Austin?
Farms ruined the fish near the shore.
Yep. All right, so today we're going to get more at how what words we use to describe ecosystems. So first of all, hey, there's Mr. Austin, his Bitmoji, and here's Mr. Monzon. I don't know, you guys don't know Mr. Monzon, but if you come to office hours, you'll see him there. So our plan for today's class is we're going to go over what biotic and abiotic factors are, because it's part of your homework assignment. I have a short video that we're going to watch, and I might need you to turn off all your cameras so that we can watch that video without my computer shutting down. And then we're going to take some notes in Ecology Notes number 2. So you're going to take those notes in Notability. We're not going to do the entire sheet of notes. We're only going to go up through energy. So, and when you look at those notes in Notability, you might be like, wow, this is a lot. We're not going to cover all of them today. And then you do have a homework assignment that will be due on Monday. Okay, so I'm going to hopefully have some time to open that up and show you what you need to do for that. So that's our plan for today. So our goal for today is to answer this question: what is an ecosystem? And we have a lot of vocab today. So I just want to remind you, when I'm listing all this vocabulary here, just remember that yesterday you should have uploaded the ecology vocab sheet that will help you if you ever need help on your homework assignment tonight. Or any other thing we do during this unit, you can always access that vocab sheet. But these are some of the words we're going to go over today. So biotic factor, abiotic factor, what an organism is, what a population is, what a community, ecosystem, and then biosphere. So these are our vocab words we're going to cover today. Our essential question is, what is an ecosystem? And how do biotic factors rely on abiotic factors? That's going to be part of your homework assignment. So hopefully when we're done with today's class and after you're done with your homework today, you will be able to say this I can statement to yourself. I can identify and describe the components of an ecosystem, and I can describe the relationship between biotic and abiotic factors. All right. So first of all, we need to understand what these things are, right? So bio, the prefix bio means life. So when we're talking about the biotic factors in an ecosystem, what are we talking about? What are the living parts of an ecosystem? And if you could add to the chat, And I am going to add to my list here. Okay, what are people saying are the living things? Can Mr. Austin, can you read them out to me? You're muted, Mr. Austin.
All right. Plants, animals, people.
Okay, what else is living in an environment that's not considered an animal, a plant, or people? Bacteria, yes. Anything else?
Cells, fungus.
Fungus, yes. There's a fungus among us. So anything that's made of cells and that's living is considered a biotic factor. Okay, so bio means life. Now, we have also abiotic factors in an ecosystem. These are things, when you see an A in front of a word that you know the definition of, that means not living. Okay, and in this case, these are things that never have lived. So every year I have students go out into the school forest and I tell them to bring me an abiotic factor in a cup, and they bring me a dead leaf or a piece of bark, and those are not considered abiotic factors. So these are things that never lived. They aren't made of cells, so you can't consider them at any point in their life as having lived. So what do we got? What do you guys think are some abiotic factors?
Water, atmosphere, air, rocks, dirt, plastic, minerals.
Minerals. I'm going to keep plastic out of there only because that's man-made and it's actually made out of coal, fossil fuels.
Rocks, temperature, sun.
Ooh, temperature. Nice. Sun. Yes, the sun is so important.
Air.
What components of air? Can we break down air into some more components?
Or ways gas, or ways that air is used.
Do I see oxygen in the chat?
Oxygen, yep.
Oops.
Nitrogen. Thank you, Lauren. Carbon. Yes. Mr. Kuchenbecker.
Carbon's a big one. Awesome. So when we talk about an ecosystem, it's not just the biotic factors. It's also their interaction with the abiotic factors. So in your homework tonight, you're going to have to come up with a few relationships that abiotic factor or biotic factors have with abiotic factors. And then you also have to come up with some biotic to biotic relationships. So how do animals rely on other animals, or how do animals rely on plants? So just keep these two things in mind as we go through, and that's going to be part of your homework assignment. And again, if you are struggling with, I don't know what these things are, Ms. Klepper just went over it really fast. Remember, you have your vocab that goes over these as well. All right. Oops, stop annotating. So I'm going to show a quick video that kind of teaches you about these other vocab words like organism, population, community, and ecosystem. And then we're going to take a few notes in your ecology notes number 2. So I'm going to hope this all works. Crossing my fingers. Here we go. And hopefully this isn't too loud. It probably is.
Our big, beautiful blue planet is in a complicated balance of life and death, predator and prey, friend and foe. The word ecology literally translates to the study of home, our home, planet Earth. The more specific definition of ecology is the study of the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical environment. It answers questions like, How do living things interact and rely on each other or on their surroundings? The survival of any species is dependent on other living organisms and non-living components. This is called interdependence. For example, humans could not survive without plants to produce oxygen, and the plants need carbon dioxide from humans and other organisms, or even from volcanic eruptions. Ecology is extremely complex and difficult to study. So one way that ecologists deal with this complexity is to use ecological models to represent or describe the components of an ecological system. This model is called an ecosphere. The largest ecological system we know of is the biosphere, planet Earth. This is the only biosphere we study because, so far, it's the only place in the universe that we know has life. The biosphere is the thin veil on Earth that goes from above the ground to the deepest parts of the ocean. All life on Earth is in the biosphere. If you zoom in to one ecosystem, it's a little easier to see all the parts working together. An ecosystem is all the organisms and non-living environment found in a particular place. The living things in this pond ecosystem include fish, turtles, aquatic plants, algae, insects, birds, and bacteria. These organisms interact in ways that affect their survival. For instance, insects and fish eat aquatic plants, and the turtles eat the fish. The non-living or physical and chemical things include the chemical composition of the pond, its pH, its levels of dissolved oxygen and carbon dioxide, and its supply of nitrogen, which all help to determine what kinds of organisms live in the pond and how abundant they are. A community is all of the interacting organisms in an area. It does not include the non-living factors. A population is all of the organisms of one type of species in the area, and an organism refers to an individual animal. In order, the levels of organization from the most broad to the narrowest are the biosphere, ecosystem, community, population, and organism. When we talk about where an organism lives, instead of saying ecosystem, which might still be a fairly large area, we could talk about its habitat. It's just a word that means the place where an organism lives. A habitat includes both biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are the living parts of the habitat. And when you add the letter A in front of the word, it means not living. So abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the habitat. Using the pond ecosystem as an example, biotic factors include grasses, algae, fish, birds, and insects. The abiotic factors include the pH of the water, rocks, soil, the sunlight, and temperature. Now, you may sometimes hear people try to use the word habitat and the word niche interchangeably, and that's not quite how they should be used. A niche is the job or role of the organism within its environment. So habitat is a home, and niche is a job. For example, a redwood tree takes energy from the sun and turns it into sugar using photosynthesis. Redwood trees are often found in foggy coastal areas like Santa Cruz, California. The habitat is the foggy coastal areas like California, and the niche is converting the sun's energy into sugar by photosynthesis. Now, some organisms fill a very broad niche and some a very specific one. Generalists eat a variety of foods, and specialists eat few or even just one type of food. Pigs are an example of a generalist. They'll eat lots of different foods very happily. This can be beneficial to them because they could survive on a variety of foods and fill a niche in many different habitats. The panda, on the other hand, is a specialist because they only eat bamboo. If bamboo is unavailable, the panda population may die off. This species has a much higher risk of becoming extinct, so it's often beneficial for organisms to be generalists. Thanks for watching this episode of Teacher's Pet. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter at SciencePet.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So she did go over a few things that aren't part of our vocab, but I think it's always good to learn more than what your teacher's asking you to know. So we are going to get into now the notes, ecology notes number 2. We're going to talk about, you're going to write down some notes on what an organism is, a population, a community, an ecosystem, and the biosphere. So you should have, hopefully by now, you know how to split your screen so that you can have my screen open on Zoom and your Notability notes open next to it. And that's how I would suggest taking these notes in in your ecology notes, number 2. And Mr. Austin, is anybody saying anything in the chat that I should address before I do these notes?
No, there's not.
Okay. If you want to start recording for today, if you haven't already. All right. Okay. Oops. So the first term in your notes is that of an organism. So an organism is an individual, meaning only one of a species. So like this cow who's picking his nose with his tongue, any individual living individual is an organism. Tonight in your homework, you're going to need to take a picture of an organism, and that can be anything that's living that you can find to take a picture of. Next is a population. So a population is a group of all of the same species together. I'm sure you've heard the word population before. When you pull into a city, like Verona, it always tells you the population. And when it tells you the population, it's the number of humans. So humans are all the same species. It's the number of humans that live in Verona. So a population is referring to all of the same species. Now, the term species means it's organisms that can and will breed, meaning they will mate in nature, but they have to be able to produce fertile offspring, which means that their babies need to be able to make babies. That's the definition of a species. My favorite example of two organisms that aren't the same species, when you cross a donkey and a horse, you make a mule, but mules are infertile. So you can cross those two animals, they're different species, but their offspring are not fertile. So you can make a mule, but all mules are sterile, meaning you can't, the only way to make a mule is to cross a donkey and a horse. So donkeys and horses are different species. All right, the next term is when we look at all of the biotic factors that are interacting in an area, and that is called a community. So a community is all the biotic living parts interacting in an area. So now we have a cow, a groundhog, grass, some plant. I'm sure there's some bacteria in there. This definition of a community is probably different than the way that you've learned community, because if I asked you to describe your community, you would probably just describe all the people that live in your neighborhood, maybe. But that isn't the way we describe community in ecology. We would have to include all the squirrels and birds and trees and grass and plants in our neighborhood if we were to use the ecology version of community. So this is all the living, only the living parts that are interacting in an area. All right, next is ecosystem. So this was our big question of the day. What is an ecosystem? So an ecosystem is mixing the biotic and the abiotic interactions that are occurring in an area. So an ecosystem is biotic and abiotic. So the non-living and the living interactions. And there's a whole bunch of different ecosystems on planet Earth. Here's a river with water and rocks and plants and fish. Then we could look at a desert, which is a completely different ecosystem with cactus and lizards and snakes and sand and rocks. A coral reef is another type of ecosystem where there's sea anemone and clownfish and salt water, not fresh water like you'd find in that river maybe. A forest is another type of ecosystem that has different biotic and abiotic factors. The polar ice caps, where you have snow, ice, polar bears, seals, those are all different types of ecosystems that we find on planet Earth. And again, you have to include the biotic and the abiotic factors when you're describing an ecosystem. Okay, we have another term, biome. So a biome is an ecosystem that's similar, and the planet is kind of broken down into these similar ecosystems in relation to how much water they receive, so their precipitation and the temperature. So if you look at this, and I asked you in your notes to write down an example of a biome, so you can just choose any one of those that's on this slide. If we look at where we are on this map, we're located in a mixed and deciduous forest. And what that means is that our trees lose their leaves. So we have fall, as you all know. But that's different than even north of us, where in Canada, which is an area called the taiga. We even have some, it's called steppe or, and some desert areas in the United States. So the United States is not all the same biome even. And again, these biomes are similar in relation to the temperature range that happens there, and then how much water they receive. Precipitation means water. So either that's rain, snow, sleet, however the water falls from the sky. All right, and then the biosphere is the layer of Earth that supports life. So bio means life, sphere refers to ball, and the Earth is our biosphere. And when I say thin layer of Earth that supports life, I'm referring to the tallest mountain that can support life and the deepest ocean that can support life. So not the whole Earth doesn't support life. You can get up high enough in mountains and you reach a dead zone where there's nothing living above that. That happens on Mount Everest and some of the other larger mountains on the planet. And then also, if you think of the middle of the Earth is molten lava, so things don't live down there either. So the biosphere is just that layer of Earth that supports life.
For the last question, it said similar in relation to temperature, and what was the other thing?
Precipitation.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see it on this slide, Lydia?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, precipitation just means water. So whether that's rain, snow, sleet. Okay. So that's where we're going to end our notes. We'll talk more about energy next week on Tuesday. So I just wanted to show you this image again and just go over one more time what these terms mean. So an organism refers to a single individual of a species. Okay, so we have this antelope here. A population is a group of the same species. So we have a group of antelope here, and that's a population. A community refers to all of the living parts of an ecosystem. So just the living parts. So we have our antelope, some zebras, some buffalo, a vulture, some lions waiting to eat. There's grass and trees. So community refers to the living parts. And then ecosystem, here we had to add the water, the rocks, this sand hill. These look like ants coming off of a sand hill. We had to include the air, the sun, the clouds. So an ecosystem has to include those abiotic factors. And then finally, the largest level of organization that we can go out is the biosphere. Okay, so you have a homework assignment this evening. It's called graded practice number 2. And so I'd like us to open that up and take a look at it before you leave today. So make sure that you know